Abigail Renee Crawford was born in 1975 to a middle-class family in Hartford, Connecticut. The Crawfords lived in a modest but cozy home on a tree-lined street, surrounded by neighbors who shared their values of hard work and community. Abigail's childhood was filled with the sounds of her parents discussing books over dinner, the scent of her mother's homemade bread, and the warmth of evenings spent reading by the fireplace. Her parents, both educators, fostered an environment where curiosity was encouraged, and learning was a joyful pursuit. From a young age, she displayed a keen intellect and a drive for success. Her parents, both educators, instilled in her a love for learning and a strong work ethic. Abigail excelled in school, particularly in mathematics and economics, earning a full scholarship to Yale University. Theodore Blackwell, born in 1970, came from old money. His family's wealth was accumulated through generations of shrewd real estate investments, strategic stakes in major corporations, and influential political connections. Their holdings included everything from luxury hotels to significant shares in energy companies, providing Theodore with a life of privilege and opportunities. His family's wealth, accumulated through generations of savvy investments and political connections, afforded him a life of privilege. Despite this, Theodore was determined to make his own mark on the world. He attended Harvard Business School, where he honed his natural talent for strategy and networking. Their paths crossed in the summer of 1997 at a finance conference in New York City. The conference was held in a grand, bustling hotel, with chandeliers casting a golden glow over the crowded hallways. The air was filled with the hum of conversation, the clinking of glasses, and the scent of fresh coffee mingling with expensive cologne. Amidst the sea of ambitious professionals, Abigail stood out with her sharp focus and quiet determination, while Theodore's confident presence seemed to draw everyone's attention. Abigail, fresh out of college and working as a junior analyst at a prestigious firm, was drawn to Theodore's confidence and charm. Theodore, in turn, was captivated by Abigail's sharp wit and ambition. Their whirlwind romance began with a late-night discussion about market trends and ended with a sunrise walk through Central Park. Within a year, they were engaged, and their wedding in the fall of 1998 was the social event of the season. The union seemed perfect. Theodore's business acumen combined with Abigail's financial expertise made them a formidable power couple. They settled in Ashbury, where Theodore started his consulting firm with Abigail by his side as CFO. The early years of their marriage were filled with success and happiness. The company grew rapidly, attracting high-profile clients and establishing a reputation for innovative solutions. Abigail and Theodore worked seamlessly together, their complementary skills driving the company to new heights. They became fixtures in Ashbury's social scene, hosting lavish parties and generously supporting local charities. To the outside world, the Blackwells appeared to have it all: a thriving business, a beautiful home, and a strong, loving partnership. At one charity gala, they were seen dancing together, lost in each other as if no one else existed. Theodore would often surprise Abigail with flowers at her office, and she would respond with a soft smile that spoke volumes of their affection. These small gestures reinforced the illusion of a perfect life, convincing everyone around them of their unbreakable bond. Friends and acquaintances often remarked on their apparent devotion to each other, citing the longing looks and gentle touches they shared even after years of marriage. Little did anyone suspect that beneath this veneer of marital bliss, the seeds of betrayal had already been planted, waiting for the right moment to sprout and ultimately destroy everything they had built together. The cracks in the Blackwells' perfect facade began to show in the spring of 2006. Abigail, who had always prided herself on her intuition, started to notice subtle changes in Theodore's behavior. Late nights at the office became more frequent, and his explanations grew increasingly vague. The affectionate gestures that had once been so natural now seemed forced and perfunctory. Driven by a gnawing suspicion, Abigail began to pay closer attention to Theodore's movements and communications. She noticed mysterious charges on their credit card statements and overheard hushed phone conversations that abruptly ended when she entered the room. Despite her growing unease, Abigail maintained a calm exterior, unwilling to confront Theodore without concrete evidence. The confirmation of her worst fears came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in April. Theodore had left his laptop at home while rushing to a meeting. A notification popped up on the screen. An email from an unknown address with the subject line, "Can't wait to see you tonight, my love." With trembling hands, Abigail opened the message and felt her world shatter. The email was from Veronica Delacroix, a French art dealer Theodore had met at a business conference in Paris the previous year. The message detailed their ongoing affair in explicit terms, leaving no doubt about the depth of their relationship. Attached were intimate photos that twisted the knife even further into Abigail's heart. As she sat there, staring at the undeniable proof of her husband's infidelity, Abigail experienced a maelstrom of emotions. Shock that left her breathless, anger that burned deep in her chest, and a profound, aching sense of betrayal that seemed to hollow her out from the inside. Waves of hurt and disbelief washed over her, each one more intense than the last, until she could barely hold herself together. Shock gave way to anger, then to a deep, aching sense of betrayal. Tears streamed down her face as she thought of the years she had dedicated to building their life together, only to have it all undermined by Theodore's selfish actions. But as the initial wave of emotion subsided, a cold, calculating resolve began to take its place. Abigail realized that she had a choice: confront Theodore and risk losing everything, or bide her time and craft a revenge so complete that it would destroy him utterly. In that moment, as rain lashed against the windows of their mansion, Abigail Blackwell made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events that would change their lives forever. In the days following her discovery, Abigail moved through her daily routine like an automaton, her mind constantly churning with plans and possibilities. She knew that if she was to have her revenge, it would require patience, cunning, and an iron will. Ideas began to form in her mind. Ways to hit Theodore where it would hurt the most, to dismantle his success piece by piece, all while he remained blissfully unaware. Abigail was determined to hit Theodore where it would hurt him most, his pride and his wallet. The first step was to ensure that Theodore remained oblivious to her knowledge of his affair. Abigail drew upon her considerable acting skills, honed through years of navigating high society events, to present a facade of normalcy. She continued to play the role of the devoted wife, all the while observing Theodore's every move with new eyes. As she watched him go about his daily life, lying effortlessly and taking her devotion for granted, Abigail's resolve only strengthened. She began to formulate a plan that would not only secure her financial future but also bring Theodore to his knees. The opportunity presented itself sooner than she had anticipated, and Abigail felt a surge of determination. She knew this was her chance to set her plans in motion, and she was ready to seize it without hesitation. Over dinner one evening, Theodore mentioned a potential new venture, a revolutionary financial technology platform that he believed could revolutionize the industry. His eyes gleamed with excitement as he spoke of the potential profits and prestige such a project could bring. Abigail saw her chance and seized it. She listened intently, asking insightful questions and offering enthusiastic support. Over the next few weeks, she subtly guided Theodore's thinking, using her financial expertise to highlight the potential benefits of the venture. She suggested that they invest heavily in the project, positioning it as a way to secure their future and leave a lasting legacy. Theodore, blinded by his own ambition and Abigail's apparent support, agreed wholeheartedly. Together, they began to pour substantial resources into developing the platform. Abigail insisted on being closely involved in every aspect of the project, citing her desire to support Theodore's vision fully. Behind the scenes, however, Abigail was meticulously laying the groundwork for her grand deception. She spent countless nights drafting intricate plans, creating false identities, and ensuring that every detail was flawless. Each shell company she set up had a specific purpose, and every offshore account was buried under layers of legitimate transactions to avoid detection. Abigail even ran simulations to predict possible outcomes, refining her approach at every step to ensure nothing was left to chance. She meticulously created a network of shell companies and offshore accounts, carefully hidden beneath layers of legitimate transactions. As the company began to generate profits, Abigail implemented a complex system of financial misdirection, siphoning off small amounts that would go unnoticed in the grand scheme of things. To further cover her tracks, Abigail cultivated relationships with key players in the financial world. She attended conferences, joined professional organizations, and built a reputation as a savvy businesswoman in her own right. These connections would prove invaluable in the years to come, providing her with both information and potential allies. Throughout this period, Abigail maintained her composure with remarkable discipline. She continued to play the role of the supportive wife, even as she worked tirelessly to undermine everything Theodore held dear. There were moments when the weight of her deception threatened to overwhelm her, but she would steel herself by remembering the pain of Theodore's betrayal. As the months turned into years, Abigail's secret fortune grew, hidden away in accounts across the globe. She knew that her plan would take time to come to fruition, but she was prepared to wait. After all, revenge, like the finest wine, only improves with age. Over the next decade, the company grew from a promising startup into a juggernaut of the financial technology world. They secured major contracts with Fortune 500 companies, launched a groundbreaking fintech platform that redefined industry standards, and expanded their operations internationally, opening offices in London, Singapore, and Dubai. Their revenue consistently doubled year after year, and they were soon recognized as one of the fastest-growing companies in the sector. Theodore Blackwell became a celebrated figure in business circles, lauded for his visionary leadership and innovative approach. Abigail stood by his side at every public appearance, the picture of a supportive and proud wife. Behind closed doors, however, Abigail was the true architect of the company's success. Her financial acumen and strategic thinking were the driving forces behind the company's most successful initiatives. She worked tirelessly, not only to ensure the company's growth but also to perfect her intricate system of embezzlement. As the company expanded, so did the opportunities for Abigail to divert funds. She created a labyrinth of transactions, each one carefully designed to be just small enough to avoid detection. Profits were funneled through a series of intermediary companies before ending up in her secret accounts. Abigail took advantage of international banking laws and cryptocurrency to further obscure the money trail. Theodore, caught up in the whirlwind of success and his ongoing affair with Veronica, remained blissfully unaware of Abigail's machinations. He basked in the glow of public adoration, accepting awards and giving keynote speeches at prestigious events. His ego grew in proportion to the company's success, making him even more susceptible to Abigail's subtle manipulations. Abigail used Theodore's inflated sense of self-importance to her advantage. One critical mistake came when Theodore, overconfident in his abilities, decided to acquire a struggling tech firm without proper due diligence. Abigail subtly encouraged his rash decision, knowing it would weaken the company's financial stability and create an opportunity for her to siphon off additional funds without raising suspicion. She encouraged him to take more risks, to expand into new markets, and to make bold acquisitions. Each new venture provided her with fresh opportunities to siphon off funds. She was careful to ensure that the company remained profitable and continued to grow, knowing that its success was crucial to maintaining her cover. As the years passed, Abigail's secret fortune grew to staggering proportions. She invested wisely, diversifying her hidden portfolio to include real estate, precious metals, and art. She even set up a separate identity, Evelyn Sinclair, complete with impeccable documentation, which she would use to manage her assets and eventually make her escape. Throughout this period, Abigail maintained her public persona with unwavering dedication. She chaired charity events, cultivated friendships with influential people, and even wrote a best-selling book on financial empowerment for women. Her reputation as a brilliant businesswoman and philanthropist grew, providing her with a network of contacts that would prove invaluable in the future. The strain of living a double life did take its toll on Abigail. There were nights when she lay awake, questioning the morality of her actions. But then she would remember the look of adoration on Theodore's face when he was with Veronica or overhear him making plans for another secret rendezvous, and her resolve would harden once more. As the company approached its 10th anniversary, Abigail knew that the time to execute the final phase of her plan was drawing near. The company had reached a peak in its valuation, and market analysts were beginning to question whether its growth could be sustained. Abigail recognized that this was the perfect moment to strike, when Theodore's guard was down and the financial world was still singing his praises. In preparation for her endgame, Abigail began to subtly withdraw from her roles in both the company and their social life. She cited a desire to focus on her philanthropic work and personal projects. Theodore, self-absorbed as ever, barely noticed the change. He was too preoccupied with maintaining his public image and managing his affair to pay much attention to his wife's activities. As the pieces of her plan fell into place, Abigail felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. She had spent 13 years meticulously crafting her revenge, and soon she would see it come to fruition. The empire she had helped build was about to crumble, and from its ashes, she would emerge reborn, wealthy beyond measure and finally free from the shackles of her fraudulent marriage. Despite Abigail's meticulous planning and execution, there were several moments over the years when her scheme came dangerously close to unraveling. In 2013, a junior accountant stumbled upon a minor inconsistency in one of the shell companies, prompting questions that Abigail had to deflect with a hastily concocted story. In 2016, a whistleblower within the company anonymously reported suspicious transactions, leading to an internal review that Abigail narrowly managed to manipulate in her favor. These close calls served as stark reminders of the precarious nature of her deception and forced her to adapt and refine her methods constantly. These close calls served as stark reminders of the precarious nature of her deception and forced her to adapt and refine her methods constantly. One of the most harrowing incidents occurred in 2012 when the company underwent a routine audit by an external firm. The lead auditor, a sharp-eyed accountant named Dominic Farrell, began to ask pointed questions about certain discrepancies he had noticed in the company's financial records. Abigail's heart raced as she realized that Farrell was dangerously close to uncovering her embezzlement scheme. Thinking quickly, Abigail orchestrated a series of distractions and misdirections. She accidentally spilled coffee on Farrell's laptop, necessitating a delay in the audit. During this time, she worked feverishly to patch the holes in her financial smokescreen. When the audit resumed, Abigail had managed to cover her tracks, but the experience left her shaken and more cautious than ever. Another complication arose in 2015 when Theodore unexpectedly decided to bring in a new CFO, citing his desire for Abigail to have more time for her philanthropic pursuits. The new CFO, Reginald Hartley, was known for his forensic approach to financial management. Abigail knew that Hartley's presence posed a significant threat to her operations. To neutralize this threat, Abigail employed a multifaceted approach. She used her extensive network to gather compromising information on Hartley, which she kept as insurance. Simultaneously, she befriended Hartley's wife, Elaine, integrating herself into their personal lives. This allowed Abigail to subtly influence Hartley's decisions and keep him focused on areas of the business that wouldn't interfere with her plans. Perhaps the closest call came in 2017 when Theodore's mistress, Veronica, began to grow dissatisfied with her role as the other woman. In a fit of jealousy, Veronica threatened to expose the affair to Abigail. Unbeknownst to both Theodore and Veronica, Abigail intercepted this threat, recognizing the potential for this situation to derail her carefully laid plans. Abigail took decisive action. She anonymously provided Veronica with evidence of Theodore's other indiscretions, effectively turning Veronica against him. Simultaneously, she manipulated events to make Theodore believe that Veronica was becoming a liability. The result was a messy but quiet end to their affair, with Abigail's involvement remaining hidden. Each of these close calls left Abigail increasingly paranoid and isolated. The constant stress of maintaining her facade while orchestrating her complex revenge began to take a toll on her mental and physical health. Yet each near discovery only strengthened her resolve. She knew that she had come too far and sacrificed too much to let her plan fail now. As 2019 dawned, Abigail sensed that the time had come to set the final stage of her plan in motion. She felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation, her mind racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. The years of meticulous planning, the sleepless nights, and the constant tension were finally about to pay off. There was fear, yes, but also a deep satisfaction in knowing that she had come this far. Abigail reminded herself that everything she had endured, every sacrifice she had made, had led her to this moment. She was ready to watch it all unfold, to finally see Theodore brought down by his own arrogance. The company had reached its zenith, with a market valuation that exceeded even Theodore's wildest dreams. The financial world was at their feet, and Theodore's ego had never been more inflated. It was the perfect moment for Abigail to pull the rug out from under him. Over the past few months, Abigail had been methodically transferring her hidden assets to her alter ego, Evelyn Sinclair. She had purchased a secluded villa in the south of France under this name and had begun the process of establishing a new life there. Every detail was meticulously planned, from her new wardrobe to the carefully crafted backstories she would use in her new community. In preparation for her disappearance, Abigail began to plant seeds of doubt about the company's future prospects among key investors and industry analysts. She used her network of contacts to spread subtle rumors about potential regulatory issues and market saturation. Her goal was to create a climate of uncertainty that would exacerbate the chaos that would follow her vanishing act. Abigail also took steps to ensure that the authorities would be led down false paths in their inevitable investigation. She carefully crafted a trail of evidence suggesting that she had been embezzling money on a much smaller scale than was actually the case. This false trail would serve to distract investigators from the true extent of her scheme and muddy the waters of the financial investigation that would follow. On the home front, Abigail began to distance herself emotionally from Theodore, citing stress and a need for personal space. She spoke of taking a solo vacation to find herself, laying the groundwork for her disappearance. Theodore, self-absorbed as ever, barely registered these changes in his wife's behavior. The night before her planned departure, Abigail allowed herself a moment of reflection. She stood in her walk-in closet, surrounded by the trappings of the life she was about to leave behind. Designer dresses, expensive jewelry, and photographs of a smiling couple that no longer existed. For a brief moment, she felt a pang of doubt. Was she really prepared to throw away 13 years of her life? But then she remembered the pain of Theodore's betrayal, the years of living a lie, and the future that awaited her. With renewed determination, she finished packing a small, inconspicuous suitcase with the essentials she would need for her new life. Everything else, the clothes, the jewels, the memories, would be left behind, a final act of shedding her old identity. As she lay in bed for the last time next to her sleeping, oblivious husband, Abigail allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. Tomorrow, Abigail Blackwell would cease to exist, and her masterpiece of revenge would be complete. On the morning of September 15, 2019, Theodore Blackwell woke to find the other side of the bed empty. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the room, but an unsettling silence lingered. He frowned, his mind still clouded with sleep, and wondered why he couldn't hear the usual sounds of Abigail moving about. A sense of unease crept over him as he glanced at the empty pillow, a faint chill settling in the pit of his stomach. This in itself was not unusual. Abigail was often an early riser. What was unusual was the silence that permeated the house. No smell of coffee brewing, no sound of the shower running or closet doors opening. Theodore called out for Abigail, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. As the minutes ticked by and his calls went unanswered, a sense of unease began to creep over him. He checked her closet, noting with growing alarm that some of her clothes were missing. Her favorite suitcase was gone from the attic. In the kitchen, he found a note propped against the coffee maker. "I need some time to myself. Don't try to find me." At first, Theodore assumed Abigail had simply followed through on her talk of a solo vacation. But as the hours passed and his calls to her cell phone went straight to voicemail, his concern deepened. By evening, with still no word from Abigail, Theodore finally called the police to report her missing. The news of Abigail Blackwell's disappearance spread through Ashbury like wildfire. Search parties were organized, flyers were distributed. Behind the scenes, however, the investigation was taking an unexpected turn. As detectives dug into the Blackwells' financial records, they began to uncover discrepancies. small at first, but growing larger and more numerous as they delved deeper. It soon became clear that this was no ordinary missing persons case. As days turned into weeks with no sign of Abigail, the focus of the investigation shifted. What had started as a search for a missing woman was rapidly evolving into a complex financial crimes investigation. And at the center of it all was Theodore Blackwell, who found himself facing a barrage of questions he couldn't answer and accusations he couldn't refute. As the investigation into Abigail's disappearance intensified, Theodore's world began to crumble. The financial discrepancies uncovered by the police led to a full-scale audit of the company's books. As the auditors pored over the records, their faces grew increasingly tense. Whispers of disbelief filled the room as they uncovered layer after layer of fraudulent transactions, each more elaborate than the last. The lead auditor shook his head, astonished at the sheer scale of the embezzlement, realizing they were dealing with a level of deception far beyond anything they had encountered before. What they found sent shockwaves through the financial world. Years of careful embezzlement were brought to light, revealing a scheme of staggering proportions. Millions of dollars had been siphoned off through an intricate web of false accounts and shell companies. The auditors were stunned by the complexity and longevity of the fraud. Initially, all fingers pointed to Abigail as the mastermind behind the embezzlement. Her role as CFO and her mysterious disappearance seemed to paint a clear picture of guilt. However, as investigators dug deeper, they found evidence implicating Theodore as well. Signatures on key documents, authorizations for suspicious transfers, and emails discussing questionable financial strategies all bore his mark. Theodore vehemently denied any knowledge of the fraud, insisting that he must have been duped by his wife. But his protestations rang hollow in the face of mounting evidence. His reputation, once sterling, was now in tatters. As news of the scandal broke, the company's stock price plummeted, investors fled, and clients began terminating their contracts. The empire that Theodore had spent years building collapsed almost overnight. The stress of the situation took a severe toll on Theodore's health. He began to suffer from anxiety attacks and insomnia. His appearance, once polished and confident, became haggard and unkempt. Friends and associates distanced themselves, leaving him increasingly isolated. In a desperate attempt to salvage his reputation, Theodore hired a high-profile defense attorney and scheduled a press conference to tell his side of the story. But on the morning of the conference, tragedy struck. Theodore was found unconscious in his study, having suffered a massive heart attack. Despite the best efforts of paramedics, Theodore Blackwell was pronounced dead at Ashbury General Hospital. The official cause of death was listed as acute myocardial infarction, brought on by extreme stress. The news of Theodore's death added another layer of sensationalism to an already scandal-ridden story. The fall of Theodore Blackwell is a tragic reminder of how quickly power and success can crumble, reported one major news outlet. He was once a shining star in the financial world, and now his name is synonymous with scandal and betrayal. Speculation ran rampant. Had the stress of the investigation finally broken him? Was it guilt over his role in the fraud? Or was it the ultimate act of a man who had lost everything? As the dust settled, the full extent of the Blackwell's deception came to light. The company was declared bankrupt, leaving hundreds of employees jobless and countless investors out of pocket. The financial technology sector, once heralded as the future of finance, faced increased scrutiny and regulation. And through it all, one question remained unanswered. Where was Abigail Blackwell? Some painted Abigail as a criminal mastermind, orchestrating one of the most audacious frauds in financial history. Others saw her as a victim, forced to take drastic action to escape an unfaithful husband. Conspiracy theories abounded, with some even suggesting that Theodore's death was not from natural causes. But the truth remained elusive, locked away with the vanished Abigail Blackwell, who had pulled off the ultimate disappearing act.